is very underrated. I think he's going to have a breakthrough year, let alone just this Premiership.
We'll have to wait and see. Leeroy there in one of his hats as ever. The Hat Man himself up against Ting here.
Leeroy.
It's going to be, by the looks of things, that Freeze Mage. This could still be Reno Mage. All of these cards will be, or at least in some versions of a Reno Mage deck. Bear in mind that basically every version of Reno Mage is entirely different.
I'm just thinking that Leeroy has already moved more than Pieman did, and Pieman didn't stop moving. Leeroy's just insane to watch on webcam.
Yeah, similarly to Ball Control, a very emotional player and someone who will jump up and down, and we'll see how this one's going to pan out. And so far, Leeroy only finding cards that are in just about every single Shaman deck,
yeah,
so we don't really know how aggressive this one's
He
going to be.
has the Manatide Totem, so it's not top-end super aggressive, that's for sure. It's more likely to be a mid-range, but Leeroy is capable of bringing surprises. One thing I can tell about TingTing is he does take his Hearthstone very seriously. He's a very competitive guy, and there is the giveaway, by the way, that this is Freeze Mage. That Evolved Kobold, buffing all your spells by 2 extra damage, looking to kill you in 1 turn.
As a Drake, I would say now points out that this is going to be more of a mid-range Shaman than anything too aggressive here. Both Doomsayers already been found here for TingTing. Now, Freeze Mage is one of my favorite decks to watch, but just because of the amount of intricacies to this deck. So many matchups where you have to like burn your AoE just to get it out of your hands so that you can use your Emperor effectively, and so many little interactions like that. That's just one measly example.
No, sure.
And with both Doomsayers in hand, we already start to look at questions like, when is the best time to use these? Can you afford to use both early to deny early pressure, but then you won't have it with a Frost Nova, and 1,000,001 other questions like that?
Yeah, with no 1-drop coming from Leeroy, you can delay it at least 1 turn before asking the question, or at least before answering it. You're probably asking it already. As you can see, TingTing already deep in thought. You only get 70 seconds, or 75 seconds, sorry, for a Hearthstone turn. So using all of your time on turn 1 to think, right, how do I answer a Totem Golem? How do I answer just him Totem? How do I answer if he J-Claws? He will already have spent some of that time in turn 1 answering those questions.
Now, if you do opt to go for the Doomsayer, at least it's a comfortable turn, because with that overload, no Hex will be available. You just about guarantee that the Doomsayer will survive and blow up the Totem Golem. However, as we rightly said before, it will be expending a resource, and one of the things in a Freeze Mage matchup is often weaving in the pings early on in the game can be the difference between a win or a loss. Yeah,
every single thing matters. If you ever watched Laughing stream, he's the Freeze Mage. I mean, he's the undisputed Freeze Mage god. There's 1 or 2 people might try and dispute it, but they're wrong. He basically, back in the day when Shaman was really ruling, like late November, December time, before the nerfs, Laughing was the only person who could keep Shaman under control. And he was saying it's because of Doomsayer. Doomsayer is the thing that makes this possible.
Doomsayer, an exceptionally powerful card in the right situation, and looks like this is going to be the right situation for the first Doomsayer of the game. Second one already in hand. But I would expect that one to be saved for a later situation where he'll be able to find a Frost Nova to drop that with and guarantee a more impactful board clear. Ice Barrier available, which wouldn't be too bad of a turn 3. Yeah,
TingTing, a bit of a wry smile there. Fireball, you may think you want all this damage because that's how you win the game, but actually you want all of your card draw.
Yep.
These early turns you're not going to do anything, so you want to waste those turns by drawing cards, setting up your barriers and blocks, and getting everything ready for turn 8, turn 9, turn 10 with your Alexstrasza and your combo. And so drawing no card draw at all this early, the only saving grace is these Doomsayers, making it very difficult for him.
The Devolve in hand for Leeroy, though, certainly can be a very impactful card.
Yeah, it will deal with the Doomsayer and allow him to save the Hex for Alexstrasza, although as it comes down, you probably lost. It's going to mean that he can definitely just restrict things like Acolyte of Pain, which is important as well.
Antonidas in the deck as well.
Sure.
That's an answer for that.
And with his low card draw, obviously Acolyte of Pain, as I mentioned, and Leeroy himself having trouble putting out damage here, but that's because he's playing a very mid-rangey, slow version of the deck here with Devolves as well.
The end is coming!
One of the most controversial cards at the moment, that Devolve.
So just going to be pinging the face along with dropping a Doomsayer. Pretty typical Freeze Mage turn there. Looks like Leroy's got company as the Catwoman approaches.
I am terrified as to what is happening to Leroy right now.
He just wants to play the Premiership, man. He doesn't want any of this right now.
Oh my goodness.
Well, we are going to be blessed with a small cat on the bed there. Praise
Wow.
the Lord above. We get to see a cat.
The cat looks so angry at being relocated.
And this is a kind of awkward turn for Leroy to be distracted with a cat, because there's another Doomsayer down. He has to decide whether it's worth committing anything, whether you want to hex this. And like, there's quite a few decisions to be made. Even devolve is an option, but he's been been attacked by a woman with a cat.
Yeah, that's just unfortunate at this point, getting a cat straight in the face.
Happens to the best of us.
It does happen to the best of us. Does it? Hang on. I don't know. I'll ask the best of us.
Maybe it's the worst of us. I can't remember which one.
So, I'm so done right now. I just lost it. Okay, so Leroy can afford to use the Hex, which keeps the versatility of having one Hex, one Devolve, and is beginning to not only develop a board, but you really don't want to have to mess around dealing with his Mana Tide Totem. You don't mind letting the minions that are doing damage live, because you're on 27, you've got block set up, you're going to have, you've got barrier set up, you're going to have more as you come, but you don't want your opponent to have outs with card draw.
You certainly don't know. The Emperor has been found for next turn, but it's one of those questions you have to ask while you're playing Freeze Mage is, when do I drop Emperor? Because turn 6 Emperor is always a nice thing to have. However, you've got to have the appropriate spells for it to be valuable. No Ice Lancers is in hand right now. Does have the Evolved Kobold and a Frostbolt though, as well as that Fireball. So
yeah, it's going to be a
the
close
worst
call. I think he might be close to doing that, and I feel like he'll probably want to drop this Loot Hoarder now, but he's going to take care of this.
Yeah.
Which means that we might not see the Emperor next turn now. It'll be interesting to see how he decides to proceed.
I like the decision, though. Stops this Jade Shaman from just racking up available golems. Especially since both Doomsayers are down. It's very important that he's able to some extent, control this board, because when you start to see those... anything above a 4-4, basically, Freeze Mage will start to struggle to deal with it. And you've got to save that burn. You've got to be able to blast that into your opponent's face when we get to crunch time.
Yeah, and TingTing still being on 27 here. The good part about that for him is he's yet to start using his freeze effects, his blizzards, potentially a flame strike or something like that.
And he's got an ice barrier in play. He has the second one in his hand. On-board damage is just not a concern for TingTing right now. He can worry about that later and hope that he draws into a flame strike. I think the biggest question on TingTing's lips right now is, do you drop this Emperor? Second Fireball in hand. It certainly doesn't feel too bad.
So 2 Fireballs and an Evolved Kobold is 16 damage for 9 mana. Obviously, you can use a Kobold with other cards when you draw them, but you had already used 1 Frostbolt.
It's enough to follow up an Alexstrasza.
It's okay, and it is enough to follow up an Alexstrasza. On the other side of that, I feel that TingTing may feel he just hasn't got enough stuff going on in this hand. But if you Loot Hoarder and ting your opponent in the face for 1...
Are we calling it a ting now?
We are,
When
yes.
TingTing plays Mage, it's a ting, not a
It is
ting.
indeed a ting. These things happen.
They certainly do, Lorinda. They certainly do.
Yeah, and he's decided to make the most of his turn there by developing some more card draw, and the Fireball isn't the big part of the combo usually, so...
No, you're absolutely right. I definitely agree with delaying the Emperor until you've got a bit more consistent burst, especially considering this is a mid-range Shaman. We could well see Jinsu Water Speakers, I want to say that card's called.
That'll do me.
Gives the 6 healing.
Do you
Certainly could
devolve
ruin
now?
that combo.
Leroy's got to think, that last turn was kind of bad for my opponent. Obviously, he can just straight up either ignore this Loot Hoarder, kill it if he wants, but devolving it might deny your opponent an important card at this point. I don't know if he's seen enough to make that read. TingTing has managed to draw an Arcane Intellect on turn 3 and cast it, so Leroy might not have the message that TingTing's low on card draw, but a devolve here might actually be spectacular.
Could be. It does also feel... I guess... I was going to say it feels like a bit of a waste, but at the same time, you've already seen both Doomsayers already. What else are the targets, really? Aside from the card draw and aside from the Emperor himself.
But he's going to play sensibly. I don't blame... This is probably the right play. Usually, if you're looking for something too cute, it's too cute. This is the sensible play, the natural play. Smash your opponent in the face before he can combo you.
So now another bit of card draw has been found. Again, you bring up the question of do you Emperor? Since he didn't last turn, you've got to assume he won't this turn.
This hand is pretty bad for an Emperor right now.
Yeah. Novice Engineer would be the obvious play here.
What's interesting here is it seems that neither player is really close to winning that, and that favours the Freeze Mage because turn by turn the Freeze Mage's hand develops into a winning hand, while the Shaman still has to actually get this stuff on the board and active. And the Freeze Mage, if it's not doing its combo, it's doing stuff to stop you from hitting them in the face. And things like Blizzard becoming easier and easier to cast now are going to help him so much.
With the Ice Lance found from the Novice Engineer, next turn Emperor starts to look a little bit tastier. Does have the coin if he really wanted to push that this turn. I feel like that would be a little overzealous though. Could certainly ping the 1-1 and just try and push a little bit more damage to face with the loot hole.
A sneaky 2 damage. Definitely an option. He's just going to make sure the 2 goes into the 5-5 and
set up for his Blizzard and such.
Yeah, I wonder if he'll play the block or the barrier. I think. Okay, playing the block now because it's out of the way. If you play the barrier, it negates your opponent's next turn, so that was an option as well.
Yeah.
But he's happy to get this block set up, and now he can forget about that, like casters tend to, for the next few turns.
And one of the most important things about playing block now instead of barrier, yes, barrier gives you a bit more armor. It doesn't really impact the game that much. It's like a miss a turn in terms of the damage that's on board for Leeroy.
Right.
But dropping the block now means that when it comes to the combo turns, when it comes to Alex Straza turns, you don't have to worry about weaving block in somewhere.
Right.
That's fine. That's
done.
already covered. And then you can just focus on smashing those spells into your opponent's face. Another Mana Tide Totem to deal with here. TingTing does have a direct answer if he wants to drop the Blizzard and just ping that one off. I would certainly consider that a decent turn to go with.
Yeah, he doesn't have much else going on in this hand. He's really struggled to accumulate any damage at all in this hand, whereas Leeroy's kind of had the opposite problem. He's got the closing damage, but he can't get something to stick on the board for any time. And this is where it's going to start kicking off, though. TingTing is almost out of ways to kill and remove these minions without starting to seriously damage his chance to winning the game. And Leeroy is going to start being able to get stuff on the board. However, TingTing is getting through his deck. And as I keep saying, the further he gets through that deck, the closer he gets to the inevitability of winning the game.
Yeah, TingTing's in one of these awkward situations as a Freeze Mage where he doesn't have that much AoE in his hands right now. And if he top decks the AoE he needs, he's not bringing more spells in for his Emperor to reduce cooldowns. So it's like, what do you actually want to draw in this situation? The answer is almost always going to be your card draw, so you can find more of the same.
Yeah, although now you're through this, you don't mind runner draws into just good stuff as well. Now you're actually at turns 9 and 10, but you're right, here's the Acolyte. He'll be relieved for that draw, but Leeroy making the read here that TingTing just can't deal with this stuff. It might not even be a read. I mean, he can next turn just re-spam the board with a Jade Lightning and an Azure Drake. But I think the Bloodlust has encouraged him to just say, you know what, you've got to freeze my board every single turn from now to the end of the game. Yep. It's called Freeze Mage for a reason. Sometimes it does that. But otherwise, I am just going to Bloodlust his block away, and then I've got...
There should be a combo spell in this game when you're playing Freeze Mage. Back in World of Warcraft and Arena, one of the key things about Freeze Mage is that when Ice Barrier is popped, you do a free Frost Nova around you, and it roots everyone. There should be some kind of combo spell that you can play as Freeze Mage, or like a second secret that when Ice Barrier is popped, when you run out of armor, you freeze the board or something like that. That'd be a really cool interaction.
That just sounds like don't ever work for Blizzard. That's just terrifying.
That'd be cool though. It would definitely for
when
those of us who played WoW a long time, it'd be a really nice shout.
It does feel kind of cool if actually freezing the whole board when you get down to 1 basically.
Well, I suppose yeah. I mean, this is off the top of my head, so there's definitely room for improvement on the idea.
In design mode, right? Yeah. Okay, so
definitely would be cool though. We've already got the shatter combo down. Just need the cool peel aspects. Anyway, moving on.
Wow.
We do have the Emperor down now, so some reduction finally coming on through. Not as much of the burst damage reduced as he would have liked, but he's running out of space to really choose.
Okay, so the first thing he needs to identify here is he can proc the block with the Bloodlust and kill the Emperor. He can do 21 with his minions and his weapon, and then he can proc the Emperor with the 2-3. That is a play that makes a lot of sense. I think that's what he was counting, to make sure he could proc it and proc it at 1. Getting rid of the Emperor is the important thing here, just to stop garbage from happening. And he is going to actually... What is he doing? He's doing something weird here. Oh, he's actually hexing it and keeping the 5-3 on the board.
Just wanting as much available on the board as possible, I think, at this stage. Now, we know that there's a second Ice Block in hand. Arcane Intellect is a pretty nice card to find as well.
Munch has gone back into the past too far, guys.
Yeah, straight in World of Warcraft mode now. The Frost Nova is very nice, but it's not enough to keep him in the game at this point. Jade Lightning in the hand of HelloLeeroy. You've got to play the Ice Block. Is going to go for that one.
This is partially why I felt that keeping the Hex was a bit better than just keeping the 2-3, because if you can get these minions through, you can get them through.
Yeah, on the other side of that, though, he does still have the Devolve. So still has the ability to remove whatever could be a roadblock in the way.
Sure. I don't think it was necessarily a mistake. It was just an interesting choice. Okay. So he knows what those two cards are, the two secrets are. The reason he's not like the Jade Lightning Face is because he's still going to have to do the 8 sometime. He's going to proc the block now.
I feel like you have to. You have to get rid of this second block so that you can threaten lethal next turn.
You've seen both Blizzards as well. So this also makes a minion that Flame Strike can't remove without being pinged, and then you can drop Aya, and it is looking really, really good for Leeroy.
There is no Flame Strike available. I believe this game is all but over.
Yeah,
There's no real way.
We'll go through the motions here of pinging his own Acolyte or Blood Mage and trying to find cards that probably aren't in his deck, just in case he's forgotten. He may have a Flame Strike as well that he can find.
Yeah,
that is possible.
It's fairly common to run at least one Flame Strike in a Freeze Mage deck.
Yep.
Let's see if he can find it. The answer is no. Loot Hoarder, not the answer he was looking for. And after a pretty long first match in this series, HelloLeeroy is going to have what is required to finish this one off. Just simply not enough removal, nor enough mana in the hand of TingTing right now.
Right, and this is the first one, assuming that nothing startling happens here now, the first one of our re-invited players to actually take a lead.
Yeah, exactly. And really, really key interaction right here. On TingTing's side of the board, we mentioned the fact that if you don't get the card draw early, if you find the burn spells early, obviously you want them later on in the game, it goes the other way as well. We saw there 3 card drawn in a row right there for TingTing. That's not what you want later on in the game. That's when you need to find your burn spells. And if you got them early on, then suddenly it's really awkward.
Right.
And you find yourself drawing the wrong cards, and in that situation, you just can't afford to. So that's kind of the... It's similar to like Miracle Rogue, right? Where you find just the wrong cards in the wrong order, and suddenly the deck just doesn't quite have the impact.
Oh, you're one of those Miracle players, aren't you? Oh, look at my hand, concede, bottom right.
I know, what? That's a bit of an accusation coming out. I never said I concede games. I just said Miracle Rogue is definitely the kind of deck
when you're going to lose, there's some Miracle Rogue players who'll just go preparation, conceal nothing, cold blood my face, bottom right, concede. And you're like, I didn't need to seal that. You shouldn't have put them in your deck. It's like, don't do that.
Well,
I had you down as one of those.
If they're that salty, the odds are they didn't put them in their deck. A pro player put them in their deck, and they just copied it.
Wow,
anyway,
the burn. That's true.
Into this, I mean, I can't complain. I net deck literally every deck I play. But HelloLeeroy against TingTing. HelloLeeroy now mentioning the Miracle Rogue is going to be bringing that one to the board, and TingTing sticking to his guns with this Freeze Mage.
Yep, going to re-queue the Freeze Mage. At this level, of course, the players pretty much all know that players tend to re-queue the same thing, and so it all becomes a massive guessing game. I wouldn't be surprised if both these players randomised.
Yeah, randomising generally the best strategy, purely because if you use any other strategy, you can be red.
Right. I mean, Leeroy possibly doesn't. If somebody doesn't, I'd put my money on it being Leeroy as a guy who feels that he could read somebody, but I still wouldn't be surprised.
I'm pretty sure he told me he randomizes.
He's got to.
That could have changed at any point.
But you've got to. You can't ever admit that you don't randomize.
That's true.
Because then you're definitely exploitable.
That is very true.
So, Leroy and the Cat off to a 1-0 here. And
Cat has actually abandoned Leroy at this point. He's like, well, you seem to be in good stead. I'll just leave you to it. Don't need my advice anymore.
I'll just go and get banned from the ESL chat.
You're not even playing Hunter.
on your behalf.
I've just noticed that Leroy is now combined with both cats and hats, but unfortunately not playing Hunter.
Oh, I see what you did there. Took me a moment to see it, but I get that. That's cool. I like it. Just to point out, we've got a result from the rest of this. This isn't the only matches going on. There are other matches going on at the same time of these. And Duncan from Meltdown, the owner of London Meltdown, has been doing pretty well recently in various tournaments qualifying for HCT, Tavern Hero, that sort of thing. Has beaten Falcone, punched 3, or Falcone as he now is, I'm afraid. Sorry, Dan. 3-0 in their match. So Duncan off to a flying start in this Swiss.
And apparently another 3-0 win from Dan Swift, or Dan SWF, I'm not sure how he wants me to say that, up against Mysterious. 3-0 to Dan.
That's a big statement.
That's
early
an upset.
on.
I would go
That
as
is
far
a
as
big
to say.
Mysterious not only
3-1 actually, I've just been corrected.
3-1, reaching both finals days here, but also picking up Epic Land recently, which is still another title. You know, he's with M&M. He's very happy with that company, with that team, with that org. So, big result there for Dan.
Yeah.
And
So this has definitely been an interesting day today in terms of the results, and certainly a lot of these players that haven't been in the Premiership before are proving that they deserve to be here, rightly so, and it's not just going to be a matter of the veterans just taking things into their own hands. Now this game starting to speed up here. HelloLeeroy finally getting to that turn 4 or turn 3 with a coin, managing to drop the Tomb Pillager.
yeah, he's also going to have at some point this double questing turn. I'm not quite sure how he navigates that around any potential blizzards and such like, but he will be looking for one huge turn possibly here to just end this.
Yeah, this is a Freeze Mage hand that looks a little bit nicer for when we start to get to Emperor turns, because there are cards in the hand that are actually valuable to have mana reduced, right? You've got Alex Straza that you can then drop at turn 8. You've got the Ice Lance and Frostbolt combo, as well as a Forgotten Torch and a Fireball. You've got some of that burn that you actually want to have reduced. He's going to use this Forgotten Torch to get that Tomb Pillager ready for a ping next turn.
Yeah, just making the most of his available mana here, of course. He could do that next turn, but then he wouldn't be able to use the other 3 mana for anything. So next turn we'll see the ping, might see the Acolyte played. But Leroy knows that 2 of this mana of TingTing's next turn is going to be taken up to just finish off this Pillager. So he can put TingTing on only 3 mana next turn and play accordingly.
Give me a quest.
Yeah, and he takes that as the green light to start making questing things happen.
And also just the fact that there is currently no...
TingTing knows what this means.
Here we go.
Talking of the eye rolls earlier, TingTing knows exactly what that means.
The key thing there is, like, as you mentioned, he knows that the ping is going to try and come through next turn, but if it's an invisible Tomb Pillager, there's no ping available. Ice Block has been drawn and has to be played already in this game. 20 HP remaining, but he knows at least 16 is going to be gone by the end of next turn.
Right, and it's very difficult to get that 4 damage from, well, not very, but to get that 4 damage from Cold Blood while you can before turn 6, before any Blizzard, was a really head play from Leroy, and he's got a whole bunch of damage here.
HelloLeeroy, I believe, is the operative term, as the player finds his namesake in the deck right now.
The only problem here is, how do you navigate this exact proc? You can proc on 4, which is okay because you've got Eviscerators and out. I think that's okay, but you don't know for fact that this is Ice Block. This might be Ice Barrier, in which case you could overcommit here into a Blizzard. He's going for it.
Okay, he's going to go with Leroy this time, not wanting to use that Eviscerate, because he knows Ice Barrier is also a thing that exists. So doing it this way means that you can proc this Ice Barrier, this Ice Block, sorry, on as little HP as possible, and it means you can push on forwards with the Eviscerate next turn to finish things off, assuming there isn't a second Ice Barrier. 4 HP is going to be that magic number. No healing in the Freeze Mage deck. And TingTing might just be against the ropes right now.
I don't think he has any outs. Let's have a look. He can freeze something with a Frostbolt. He can freeze something with an Ice Light. But how does he stop the Eviscerate?
That is going to be game on this one. There is no way for him to stop it. The Ice Barrier is not there. And if he uses any of his card draw tools available alongside his ping, he won't have the mana to use an ice block, even if he found it. Unfortunately for TingTing, he doesn't even know it yet, but this game is well and truly over.
I think he knows it. He's just composing himself and working out, right, what if Leroy, who has got a, as we said before, bubbly personality, has decided to do something for the cameras. Maybe, just maybe, he hasn't got the Eviscerate, but he knows it in his heart of hearts that next turn it's going to be card into Eviscerate. Leroy says, thinking, emoji.
I think Leroy knows that this one's all but over. And well, TingTing can do what he tries, but the emojis are just simply too strong from Leroy. And alongside with his coin and his thinking face, he will be able to finish this one off. Leroy, always the showman. He's always up for that bit of a laugh. And will be able to finish things off with the Eviscerate. Gets a bit of a shirt tug on there as well. And he's feeling confident as he goes 2-0 in this series.
Thinking. So, 2-0, Leroy making pretty short work of that. He did have the hand to do it. So, you're still thinking?
I was still thinking.
Still thinking. I'm sorry, I interrupted your train of thinking.
I'm always thinking. But yeah, this has been a pretty powerful performance from Leroy so far. He's 2-0 up in this series, and once again, we see a Miracle Rogue finds either a Van Cleef for requesting and just says, do you know what? I don't think you've got the answers right now. And he was absolutely right. Now, we move on to a Zoo Warlock. Once
Spot
again
which players
today,
talk to each other, ladies and gentlemen.
yeah. And it's going to be up against this Murloc Paladin. We said, you know, out of the available Paladin decks right now, Murloc Paladin certainly seems like the most powerful one. And it is going to be what TingTing brings to the table. But definitely a deck that I wouldn't go as far as to say is, you know, at the forefront of the meta.
No, it's interesting he's chosen to go with this rather than the Rogue, for instance, version. Maybe he's gone for both, but no, he hasn't got a Rogue. So yeah, he's gone for this instead of the Rogue. But this is much more of a control deck a lot of the time with some very bursty options.
Yeah.
It doesn't really play like the Rogue deck in any way or form. It just has some cards that are the same.
Very, very similar to the any Finn Paladins of
really
old,
is.
but with Finger added, it's got a little bit more pressure to actually have some impact mid-game as well, if you find the opportunity.
And one of the things it has trouble with here, from my very limited interaction of playing a Finger Paladin and Zoo against each other, which isn't a meta matchup particularly. I have played a chunk of it.
I'm going to say, if you've got a lot of experience of this matchup, I'm impressed.
I've got some. There was a period where Alliance lost 6-0 to Finger Paladin, and I happened to be playing Zoo at the time, so I ran into some. And if the Zoo can just keep putting stuff on the board, which is kind of what Zoo does, it gets really close. It's a matchup where the slightest mistake can just cost you at either side.
And one of the key things as well, when you're talking about Zoo, the number one thing that you think of is just flooding the board, right? Going really wide and having so many minions that it's impossible to deal with. Paladin obviously historically has three major board clears. You've got Doomsayer, you've got Equality Pyro, and you've got Consecrate.
Sure.
Over the last season, when we saw a fair bit of Control Paladin, when Whispers first came out and it was that very heavy control meta, or I think that was actually season 1, wasn't it? But we saw a lot of Paladin games where the board clear just wasn't found, and you'd see Zoo decks like just kind of rampage over the board, and at that point when you don't really have the board clear available, there's very little you can do, and it's those turns where you have the forbidden healing and you end up healing for 16 or something, but then you take 17 damage the next turn anyway. It's the same situation that you see Reno decks get in, where they get to play Reno, but when the board is that strong anyway, it's just not enough.
Yeah, the Zoo deck has to just make sure it doesn't overextend too badly. You always think, okay, so my opponent's got to spend this much mana clearing this board. I'm going to have so much mana next turn I can reinvent a board. Obviously, the thing we've ignored, the Murloc in the room that we haven't mentioned for the first 4 turns, is this Finger, and it can just turn this completely and utterly on its head. Leroy hasn't drawn Soulfire, and that is something. You don't need to kill the Finger, you need to kill the stuff that Finger makes. If you can weather that storm, though, unlike the Rogue deck that keeps slapping you about, you do tend to re-establish.
one of the most important things when you're playing against a Finja is making sure that you don't set up the board with fodder for it.
Right.
So far, Leeroy hasn't, but Zoo is definitely a deck that is very capable of dropping
It kind of
fodder.
has to, right? Eventually, it kind of has to do it.
So it's going to be interesting to see how much Leeroy actually plays around this Finja in advance of it being played. Actually dropping a second Councilman along with that Void Walker. Starting to get a very powerful board very early on in the game, and we're already looking at a situation where board clear isn't really available right now, but it kind of needs to be soon.
Yeah, and Finja is going to be too slow at this point.
You need the equality. Consecrate is fine. With a Pyromancer, even better, but Equality Consecrate for 6 mana is enough for you to reduce the pressure coming out from the Zoo. But right now, there is no equality in the hand of TingTing.
And there's going to be a whole bunch of damage coming in here. I think we start with a Dark Peddler here, we being Leeroy on this occasion. See what's happening, because you can just get so much damage through from dropping 3 minions and hitting face here, but you've got to be so careful not to get your board cleared. But wouldn't it have been cleared on turn 4 if they could do it?
That is going to be the question. And realistically, the odds of them having the board clear at this stage, when obviously Consecrate just simply isn't enough.
Right.
When you're going against things like Councilman, they're just too tanky. And one of the things that Paladin always has historically struggled with is spot removal. Yes, you've got things like the Peacekeeper that will reduce the attack that something has, but it doesn't actually remove it from the board. It can still be a massive trading tool. And now Leeroy just trying to figure out the best sequencing he can for this turn to maximize damage coming out from these Councilmen without overcommitting to the board and ending up losing everything.
There's a lot of players here that are weird. Like, he could play the Imp and then Argus up the 2 things on the right-hand side to protect his... This play is really interesting. It's the one that he just spent the whole turn convincing himself of. He has decided that these Councilmen are going to win him the game. And so rather than making them gigantic this turn, I'm just going to make it so you can't kill them.
Hey man, this is exactly the same strategy that worked in Miracle Rogue twice today, and it seems to be working out so far in this game as well.
Yeah, you don't have Conceal, but what you do have is Taunt, which is kind of beginner's level Conceal.
Yeah, I suppose that's one way of looking at things. Consecrate, going to come on through here, which will mean one of the Councilmen... Oh no, sorry, I was going to say one of the Councilmen can be dealt with, but it can't. There's no way through the Void Walker right now. More damage is going to come through. 13 HP remaining. I believe this game is all but over.
That was an incredible play there from Leeroy. It looked weird from his side of it, but he realised that TingTing was out of AoE, or at least couldn't clear that particular board, and set it up, and he is going to take this down at 3-0.
Wow.
Not sure what that one says, but it's probably pleasant.
He's moving it about too much. I don't think he understands how bitrate works on Skype, but we can't see it if you keep moving it, mate.
Oh, Leeroy, we had the thinking, but we haven't got the second one. You have to use that next time you win, so see you in week 5.
Pop a picture on Twitter, and then we'll see what it says. But yeah, just dropping a whole bunch of minions. He's got the damage, and will be able to finish this game off. TingTing isn't having any of it. He doesn't want to see the combo pieces you've got, Leeroy. The game is over. And that is a 3-0 victory. So we said Leeroy kind of has his work cut out being one of the only veterans to try and get a win. 3-0 is a convincing way to do it.
So, what Leeroy will be saying, not saying this is what I'm saying, there were 4 people in the finals last time. Mysterious has lost. Boar has lost. Jumbre's lost. Leeroy is the Premiership, guys.
Leeroy, the best player in the Premiership. Don't quote us on that just yet. We'll wait and see as we
Might
get
be a little way to go. There's
season.
many stages of elimination, which I think is a fantastic idea. It's being done a really good way.
I just want to give a quick shout out to our audio guy with the party at Karazhan, last night in Karazhan music that's going on right now. Excellent choice on that one. We're going to be going into a quick break, but join us afterwards for Cypher versus Osher. Both of these guys are Premiership veterans, and we'll see who's going to be able to take the cake in a few minutes' time.